Thanks everyone for joining us and being here this Saturday. Really appreciate it. Hope everyone is having a good weekend so far. Happy Pride. This is one of the few weekends on Pride Month. And my name is Jackie. For those who don't know me, I live in San Francisco. I work for the city here, and I'm a co-founder of Transgender School along with my mom.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bridget. I'm Jackie's very proud mom. And before we get into our very important talk about Pride, the meaning and the history of Pride today, thank you for being here for that. We first want to just share a couple really exciting pieces of news about what we have available for you. We have a brand new 90-minute educational video that's on Vimeo that you can rent for an entire year. And it's how to be an ally. It's Jackie and me sharing Jackie's story of coming out. We actually reenact and relive the moment that she came out so that people can learn from it and key conversations that we had following that day. And there's a lot to learn from that. We share our ally model. We answer questions from the live audience who was with us that day. And the video is only for unlimited rental, $25, and $5 of every rental of that video goes to our wonderful support group, Transforming Family. It's great for parents, friends, family members, teachers, organizations, everyone and anyone in any transgender person's life to help them understand what coming out can be like from our example. We don't speak for everyone, but we share our example and how to be an ally. The top tips based on all our research and our own experience about how to be an ally and an advocate. So please check that out. Jackie, do you have the link handy to throw into the chat for everybody on Facebook?
Yeah, it's vimeo.com/on-demand/transally. I know there's a few of you watching in different event pages, but if you click through to the actual live stream, we'll be throwing some links in the comments there.
Yeah, I just put it in there, Jackie. So the link to the video is there and it has a great little trailer. It's all very professionally edited. We invested in having it professionally edited for you. So we hope you'll check that out. We also have a monthly membership program on Patreon, which we add to every single week. We're super excited about what we're adding this weekend. Every weekend we add a new video or something that we've done that's exclusive content just for our membership folks, and it's only $5 a month. So please check that out. I think I just put the link in there as well. And tomorrow we're going to be adding a conference presentation that we did on LGBTQ terminology and inclusion, and it was very well received. Got rave reviews from the live participants at this conference, which was for women in tech. And so we're going to be sharing that exclusively in our Patreon, and we have tons in there. I think we have 17 videos there already. So much to learn there. So check those out. We also have free content. We have our podcast, Transgender School Podcast, that we hope you will listen to and share. We have on our YouTube page all the videos from our podcasts and lots that we share on social media, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Medium. We have our own Medium page, and it's all called Transgender School. Anything to add, Jackie?
I think you covered it better than I could have, definitely.
All right, so we have to make sure you know everything that we're doing before we dive in, but should we go ahead and get started, Jackie?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right, so this is the question we're here to answer. What is Pride?
Or, to put it another way, how did a march that began as a commemoration of violent resistance against the NYPD become an excuse for straight people to get drunk while a parade of corporate-sponsored floats rolled by?
Yeah, so we're going to do our best to answer that question and also give you a little look at what Pride may look like in the future. And we're going to have plenty of time to answer all your questions.
So to understand what Pride means to a lot of queer people, we have to go back to the early morning of Saturday, June 28th, 1969 in New York City, when the patrons of the Stonewall Inn were greeted by a police raid and decided to fight back.
A man who was walking nearby was quoted, so know that I'm not saying this. This is his quote. He was walking his dog nearby, and this is what he said about what he saw. The cops were totally humiliated. This never, ever happened. They were angrier than I guess they had ever been because everybody else had rioted, but the fairies were not supposed to riot. No group had ever forced cops to retreat before. So the anger was just enormous. I mean, they wanted to kill.
The NYPD responded with brutal force, but the group fighting back only grew bigger and gayer. By the next night, thousands of people gathered in front of the destroyed bar, and the riot spilled over into the neighboring blocks. The Stonewall Riot, in which self-identified drag queen Marcia P Johnson and butch lesbian Stormy DeLaviere participated.
Stonewall marked a turning point in a country where police in all cities, large and small, whether they were liberal or conservative, routinely raided gay bars with overwhelming violence. Even in San Francisco, believe it or not, LGBTQ people lived under the constant threat of violence and were unable to create any safe spaces that they could gather without facing repeated raids.
So it's important to note that Stonewall was not the first riot instigated by queers who were tired of being beaten up by the police. 3 years earlier, in San Francisco's Tenderloin neighborhood, the staff of Compton's cafeteria, a popular gathering spot for trans women, called the police on their customers. This was a regular occurrence, but this time when the police showed up, the customers fought back, throwing anything within arm's reach at the responding officers, even using their heels and purses as weapons.
So then in 1970, it was the first anniversary of the Stonewall Riot, and several of the participants organized what was called the Christopher Street Liberation Day, a march that took place in New York City, Chicago, and Los Angeles. By 1972, the annual march had grown exponentially and expanded to over a dozen major cities throughout the US and Western Europe.
In 1974, San Francisco community leader and camera shop owner Harvey Milk challenged Gilbert Baker, an Army veteran from Parsons, Kansas, to create a symbol for the gay community. 4 years later, Baker debuted the rainbow pride flag, which originally included 8 colors, later reduced to 6 in the more popular version due to availability of fabric.
And after we finish our talk, we're going to show you a very short little slideshow, which is going to have those flags in it and the more current versions of those flags, which include more people. And so we'll share that with you a little bit in a little bit, just a little bit. So today, dozens of alternative versions of this flag exist, as I just said, and we're going to show you a couple of them, many of which include those same trans pride colors, include the trans pride colors, which are the light blue and the light pink. And one popular version, I'm sure you've all seen it, it's all over social media right now for Pride Month, was created by graphic designer Daniel Quasar. And it also includes the black and brown stripes to represent people of color, as well as people with AIDS and those no longer living.
While the previous symbol that the gay community had adopted, the pink triangle, used by Nazis to identify queer people, represented a dark chapter in our history, the pride flag represented a sense of hope as the fight for LGBTQ rights in the US accelerated. Its bright colors signified a new era of visibility and refusal to remain closeted.
So here's where some issues come in. Over the past 50 years, companies have realized that marketing directly to LGBTQ consumers can be lucrative. So pride marches, because of this, have evolved from political protests, as they should be, focused on demanding human rights and the end of myriad abuses against LGBTQ people, to becoming these large rainbow themed parades that feel much more like something like the Tournament of Roses or Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade than a protest or a march with any kind of political goal, let alone what they originally were, which was the commemoration of a riot.
And I guess this would maybe be fine if all queer people had equal rights and equitable access to our country's immense wealth, but I think we both know the reality is that queer people, particularly queer people of color, remain legally marginalized and economically disenfranchised in the United States and throughout the world.
So some really important people that we want you to know the names of in the movement, Marcia P Johnson and Sylvia Rivera. They formed the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, STAR organization, to provide shelter for queer youth shortly following Stonewall. Sylvia and Marcia even faced marginalization within the gay community. In 1973, Johnson and Rivera were banned from participating in pride parades by the organizing committee because they felt that drag queens gave the event a bad name.
Both queens lacked stable shelter for most of their lives, with Rivera living in the gay camp at the Christopher Street Piers until her death in 2002. In 1992, Johnson's body was found floating in the Hudson River, and the NYPD quickly ruled her death a suicide, despite a massive wound on the back of her head and eyewitness testimony that Johnson had been in a fight that night, including a potential suspect who bragged at a bar that he killed a drag queen named Marcia. None of these leads were ever followed up on by the NYPD. So now we're going to show a video of Sylvia Rivera expressing her frustration at the 1973 Gay Pride rally in New York City. She was denied access to the stage and basically had to force her way up there after a vote of the crowd decided to allow her to speak. This is what she said.
Hi, lady. Y'all better quiet down. Nothing. I've been trying to get up here all day for your gay brothers and your gay sisters in jail. They write me every motherfucking week and ask for your help. And you all don't do a goddamn thing for them. Have you ever been beaten up and raped in jail? Now think about it. They've been beaten up and raped after they haven't spent much of their money in jail to get their cell phones and try to get their sex change. The women have tried to fight for their sex changes or to become women of the women's liberation. And they write STAR, not the women's group. They do not write women. They do not write men. They write STAR because we're trying to do something for them. I have been to jail. I have been raped and beaten many times by men, heterosexual men that do not belong in the homosexual shelter. But do you do anything for them? No, you all tell me to go and hide my tail between my legs. I will not longer put up with this shit. I have been beaten. I have had my nose broken. I have been thrown in jail. I have lost my job. I have lost my apartment for gay liberation. And you all treat me this way? What the fuck's wrong with you all? Think about that. I do not believe in a revolution, but you all do. I believe in the gay power. I believe in us getting our rights, or else I would not be out there fighting for our rights. That's all I wanted to say to your people. If you all want to know about the people that are in jail, and do not forget Bambi Lamore and Dora Marks, Kenny Messner, and other gay people that are in jail, come and see the people at Star House on 12th Street, on 640 East 12th Street, between B and C. apartment 14. The people that are trying to do something for all of us and not men and women that belong to a white middle class, white club. And that's what you all belong to. Revolution now! Give me a G! Give me an A! Give me a Y! Give me a P! Give me an O! Give me a W! Give me an E! Give me an R! Gay power! Louder gay power!
So that was Sylvia Rivera, and I think that it was incredibly moving to hear from her directly and imagine what things must have been like, and seeing all that she gave to the movement and how she was treated is quite disturbing. To another, again, leader in the movement, who Jackie talked about, Marcia P Johnson, who it appears was murdered. The NYPD's unwillingness to investigate her death reflects the reality that most of the institutions oppressing queer people had successfully resisted any kind of fundamental change for over 3 decades, despite demands for equality. And it also reflects a disturbing trend in which police retaliate against those who make them look bad, either through direct violence or refusing to do their jobs.
Yeah, just as someone who's served in a public facing government role, who's resolved thousands of constituent inquiries, I can honestly say that I have never denied someone service or delayed service simply because I knew them to be critical of my boss or a supporter of her political opponents. On a personal level, I just want to say from the bottom of my heart that any other public servant who can't say the same should be ashamed of themselves and should be fired.
Yeah, so we hope that gave you some new information, helpful information about really how Pride started and what it was all about. So now fast forward to another decade, to March 2003, when the Wayne County Sheriff's Department raided the Power Plant, a private club in Detroit frequented by Black LGBTQ residents. Authors Joey Mogul, Andrea Ritchie, and Kay Whitlock describe the raid in their book, Queer Injustice, the Criminalization of LGBT People in the United States. Here's what they say.
Around 3 a.m., between 50 and 100 officers from the Wayne County Sheriff's Department, dressed in black clothing with guns drawn and laser sights on, suddenly cut the lights and stormed the premises, shouting orders for everyone to hit the floor. Over 350 people in the club at that time were handcuffed, forced to lie face down on the floor, and detained for up to 12 hours, left to sit in their own and others' urine and waste. Some were kicked in the head and back, slammed into walls, and verbally abused. Officers on the scene were heard saying things like, "It's a bunch of fags," and "Those fags in here make me sick." As at Stonewall, the officers claimed to be enforcing building and liquor codes. The sheriff's department said they were responding to complaints from neighbors and concerns for public safety.
The Queer Injustice authors wrote that, as demonstrated by the power plant incident, in many ways, policing of queers has not changed significantly since the days when it sparked outrage and resistance from LGBT communities, although its focus has narrowed to some degree.
Given that queer people continue to be brutalized by police and the wealth gap in this country is bigger today than it was when Pride first started, we're still unable to pass the Equality Act with Democrats controlling Congress and the White House. I believe we have a moral obligation to use this platform to demand a radical transfer of wealth and power to the most marginalized members of our society.
So the next time you watch the following corporate pride contingents walk by, Remember, Gilead, for example, charges $21,360 a year for Truvada, which is the only FDA-approved version of the preventative medication PrEP, which prevents the contraction of HIV. Meanwhile, HIV continues to spread, especially among LGBTQ people of color and those living in the global South, many of whom do not have access to health insurance. Yet in 2018, Gilead in 2018 offered their new CEO a $30.2 million compensation package.
Blue Shield, on the other hand, was actually stripped of its tax-exempt status by the state of California in 2015 because it hoarded billions of dollars, paid its executives millions, and refused to offer services to Medi-Cal recipients.
Yet you'll see all these folks with their balloons and their floats at Pride claiming to, support LGBT communities. So another example, Wells Fargo destroyed the careers of employees who attempted to blow the whistle on systematic efforts to defraud customers who spoke limited English, students opening accounts for the first time, and elderly customers who didn't fully understand the products that they were purchasing. They also funded the Dakota Access Pipeline to the tune of $120 million over the objections of Indigenous communities.
So all of this begs the question, why do self-respecting organizations that call themselves San Francisco Pride or New York City Pride allow companies like these to sponsor their events? Because they've accepted that pride, like most aspects of our lives, has become simply another function of capitalism, another chance to advertise and excuse to consume.
In 2019, the San Francisco Police Department violently arrested a group of LGBTQ protesters who blocked the route during the San Francisco Pride to protest corporate and police participation in the parade. Now, Jackie and I were there. We were marching in the parade that day. I remember it like it was yesterday, hearing that there was a protest happening, and that's why the march was stopping. But we had no idea what was going on. We were just a few blocks away from this protest. We were sitting on the concrete of Market Street, wondering what was happening. Jackie and her friends were holding a banner commemorating the 50th anniversary of Stonewall and the 53rd anniversary of Compton's at the time. And we had no idea what was unfolding right down the street.
So this incident highlighted the tension at the center of modern Pride events between radical queer protesters and the increasingly large and militarized armies of police deployed to make sure the corporate floats roll along as planned.
Over a year later, San Francisco Pride announced that it would prohibit uniformed police officers from marching in the scaled down 2021 event. A similar commitment from New York City's Heritage of Pride organization was not enough to satisfy the Reclaim Pride organizers, who drew over 45,000 attendees to their corporate cop-free march in 2019.
Other alternatives include dyke marches and trans marches, both of which occur in many cities on the same weekend as Pride and are often more grassroots protest style events. In the two Prides that I've been to since coming out, I can personally say I've enjoyed the dyke and trans marches a lot more than the main event. So as we've explained tonight, the future of Pride is complicated, especially when you throw COVID in the mix. But if Reclaim Pride continues to grow their New York City march and similar marches begin to compete with other major Pride events around the world, then there's a real potential for queer people to make our voices heard and start using Pride to make people uncomfortable, shake things up, and if necessary, break things.
Yeah, it'll be an uphill battle though. Pride has become a literal institution in big cities. And like most institutions, local Pride organizations are prone to corporate capture and often operate in less than transparent ways.
But as Reclaim Pride has shown, the organizations are irrelevant if enough queer people decide to organize alternative events and boycott corporate Pride. That means the future of Pride is up to us, and we have a responsibility to collectively decide to allow it to continue in its current form or reclaim it.
So to answer our initial question and the title of this talk today, Is Pride a protest or a party? Well, clearly Jackie and I feel strongly that it should be a protest, much more than it should be a party. And the final thing we'd like to share with you is a brief little slideshow that we put together with some of the people we talked about, the events we talked about, and the flags that we talked about as well. And the newest flag is inclusive of Black and Brown lives, transgender lives, and intersex people. And the flag was adapted by an intersex artist. So that's the very last thing that you'll see in this slideshow.
And after the slideshow, we will go ahead and take any and all questions that you might have. So feel free to start sending those in the comments. And we'll take just another moment to show you the different variations of flags that we mentioned. So this was the original. You can see it used to have a lighter pink and purple, but or I think it was a lighter blue and pink. Yeah, that both disappeared in the latest version. I ended up learning that was due to availability of fabric, which I thought was really interesting. So that was the original version Gilbert Baker created. And then this was the more common six color version that you likely know that we've seen everywhere and at all the Pride celebrations, that has gone from kind of a symbol of hope to a brand, and the future of its meaning is a little bit uncertain. And then we have these newer, more inclusive Pride flags, including trans people, including Black and brown queer people, reflecting the intersectionality there. And another one reflecting, I believe, asexuality and intersex people. So continually evolving flag, and glad to answer any questions about that or anything else that we talked about today. Thanks again so much, everyone, for being here and for hearing us out about the history of Pride and why we think it should be more of a protest than a party.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Jackie put a lot of work into creating this for us to share with you today. And I thank you, Jackie, for doing that. And we would love to know what more you would like to know. And thank you. I'm just looking over the comments, and I want to thank everybody for being here. What a great turnout. So nice to see all of you. And thank you for the support. Thank you for being part of our community. If we don't get any questions, Jackie, are you looking at the comments?
Yeah, I have the comments open, so feel free to submit questions. No worries. If not, that means we just told you everything you needed to know about Pride.
Yeah, and I'll take this opportunity, since I see we definitely have some new folks with us who haven't been to our programs before, and I thank you so much for joining us for the first time. Want to make sure you know that Jackie and I have been doing this for 8 months now. I think it is. We started in October of 2020, and
time flies.
Yeah, we have so many webinars and live streams recorded, and we're putting them all in our Patreon. So if you want to see all that we've been doing, Jackie has shared her coming out story. We have talked about our family's journey and experience. We've had her dad on the live stream. We've had her grandparents on the live stream. We've had all kinds of guests, and we have so much content out there. And we have our ally video, which is a 90-minute really important video that I think everybody should see about how to be an ally for transgender people. I think it'd be great if we could get help getting it into schools for teachers. There's so much happening and such a great need there. It would be great to see it more available for families and parents and loved ones and everyone in a transgender person's life who wants to know how to be truly supportive. The Family Acceptance Project out of San Francisco State University has done research that found that highly unsupportive family reactions to an LGBTQ youth increase the suicide risk by 8 times. So the work we're doing is life-saving. It is not just pride floats with balloons. Okay. So please know that we have lots more content and we really want to get it out there to help people. So Jackie, what are people saying in the comments?
Really appreciate all the great feedback. Thank you everyone for coming. I'm so glad you enjoyed the presentation. I hope you learned something. I definitely learned a few things researching this that I didn't know before. And I think it has reminded me that I need to continue doing everything I can to learn more about the history of the LGBTQ community, because I think unfortunately so much of our history is erased and is intentionally not told and not taught in our schools and in our colleges. So glad to do whatever I can to help get that history out there.
Yeah, and if you want to share, this is Pride Month, so it's a great time to share this live stream. We're going to leave it up for the rest of the month for Pride Month, and then what we always do is take down our live streams and everything that we do and put them in our Patreon membership, because we're so thankful. Our membership is growing, and we want to make sure that we have lots of great exclusive content there for people who are investing in transgender school, but we have lots of free offerings as well. So please share this live stream. You can share it directly from Transgender School page where you all are now, and you can just share it to your page. You can share it with a group. You can share it anywhere you like. I think it's very relevant for Pride Month, and you can share all the information that we have on all our social media as well as our podcast. So please, if you're not on our Facebook page, haven't liked it and gone there, please check that out. And please also go to our website, transgenderschool.org, where we have lots of free resources and information there for you. And if you didn't know, we were on our local ABC News this week. We're so thankful. If anybody out there is out there from ABC News, they did a beautiful segment, a piece. It was almost 3 minutes long, I think, and it was just wonderful in promoting transgender school and what we're teaching people, and our video. And we're so thankful for that. And if you'd like to see that wonderful segment that we were so excited to see on the news, it's very weird to see yourself on the news. It's there. It's all over our social media. It's on our Instagram. It's on our Facebook page. And we also have a Facebook group for those who are really committed and want to learn and teach and have more in-depth conversations about transgender education and advocacy. Please join our private Facebook group as well.
Thanks, everyone. And I do see one question I will answer really quickly before we sign off for the afternoon is, do you have any suggestions for documentaries and movies to watch to become more informed? That's a great question. There are a ton of great documentaries and movies out there, but one that I will recommend is Screaming Queens, the riot at Compton's cafeteria. It's a 2005 documentary, just under an hour. It's super informative and in a chapter of LGBT history that often gets overlooked because it happened before Stonewall. So that's Screaming Queens, the riot at Compton's cafeteria. And there are lots of other great films that I'm sure we would be glad to recommend as well.
And Jackie's so humble. She's not even going to recommend the documentary that she's in. But I am. Jackie was in the documentary State of Pride, which I think is a great exploration of the history of Pride and how it's changed. And she's at about 30 minutes into the movie. So I put the link for that in the chat.
And yeah, I definitely recommend that one as well. That's a great one. And so, yeah, a couple great recommendations. And thanks again, everyone, so much for being here on this Saturday afternoon. I hope that you all have a great rest of your weekend.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you for being with us. Please join in the protest this month. It's Pride Month, and we thank you for being here. Bye-bye.